Well, good afternoon, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that very kind introduction, Pat. I'm delighted, truly delighted to be asked to come back to the National Equine Forum. As Pat said, I last spoke here in March 2020, and within a few days the entire country was locked down, so I'm hoping to have a better outcome to this speech today. We'll see. But the theme of this talk is about collaboration and how collaboration can result in change. And I'm going to return to the issue of the trade in donkey skins for the production of a jiao, which is a traditional Chinese medicine, and to show how this issue has developed over the last 4 years and where we are in terms of our work to protect donkeys and the communities who rely on them. So a quick recap. So apologies for those of you that are here in 2020 and have good memories, but I'm just going to whisk through a few slides that I used at that presentation. So firstly, what is a jiao? It's a traditional medicine. It's made by boiling the skins of donkeys, so the collagen can be made into a medicine. There's a very high demand for the product. It's very well marketed and moves with the times. Apparently now it cures COVID. And it means there's a very large number of donkey skins needed every year to supply that demand. And it's had a devastating effect on the donkey population of China. You can see how that's fallen dramatically in just a very few years. This slide shows the number of hides that are needed to produce the amounts of a jiao that are being manufactured. This was a piece of work by the University of Reading. And in 2020, as you can see, it was believed that up to 4.8 million donkey skins a year were needed, and most of those would have to be sourced from outside of China. I should say that they've done further work more recently, and they now believe this figure is 5.9 million. And we can see from this slide where the donkeys are being sourced from. And so you can see a large take of donkeys from across the world, all heading into the production of a jiao. And as I mentioned last time, our work on this issue is not just the donkey sanctuary. I want to talk today about the collaboration and the work we do with others. And we work closely with our partners in the International Coalition for Working Equids, or ICWI, to give it its snappy title. Hopefully, all organisations that are well known to most of you, apart from ourselves, Brook, SPANA, which is the Society for Protection of Animals Abroad, and World Horse Welfare. And whilst we do work well together, and we're obviously like-minded with our aims, I think we've all understood, or grown to understand, that significant change needs more actors in the room at different levels and from different sectors. And that can be just at a community level. The community voice can be hugely powerful. Hearing from people who are directly affected by the skin trade. This is the Association of Donkey Owners Kenya, highlighting very publicly that it is often women who carry the burden when donkeys are stolen or sold into the skin trade. And this did lead to the Kenyan government taking action, and in turn the Kenyan government became one of the voices for wider change across Africa. But building that wider coalition means thinking about the bigger picture. One of my own team spotted that donkey skins were being sold online on sites that also claimed they could source wildlife products. And this led us to wonder if these trades are connected. So we contacted Wild Crew at the University of Oxford, who investigated this for us. And their peer-reviewed paper did indeed show that there is a link between the donkey skin trade and the illegal wildlife trade, with many of the same players. And moreover, the transporting of donkey skins, when it's legal, was often used to hide illegal wildlife products, leading to Wild Crew calling this the Trojan donkey. But the discovery of this intertwined nature of these trades meant we had new opportunities for building the collaboration, and we could help others work in another important area, such as illegal wildlife. So there are new partners we're working with now, and this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but it shows some of the partners, and you can see how important the wildlife link has become. You can see animal welfare, conservation, law enforcement, legal advocates, and others joining us in this work. And we're now reaching out to the transport sector. Donkey skins and the illegal trade they can hide pose problems for the shipping and the aviation sectors. Already the International Maritime Organization have added donkey skins into their training modules so that people working in the maritime industry know there's a red flag when donkey skins are being carried in containers. They could have an awful lot more in there as well. And all of these freight carriers are members of United for Wildlife and doing great work, and they don't want the donkey skin trade to undermine all of that. So now we're partnering with and working with Qatar Airways, with Emirates, and in the shipping sector with CMA, CGM, Maersk, MSC, One, and Swire, all supportive allies. And this growing voice from community to the global private sector is putting this issue onto government's agendas. So in December 2022, there was a Pan-African conference on donkeys. It was with the Equi Partnership, ourselves, Brook, Sparna and World Horse Welfare. It was with the Tanzanian government who hosted it, and with AUIBAR, which is the African Union's Bureau for Animal Resources. And it involved member states and other participants. The conference acknowledged that the unsustainability of what was happening to donkeys in Africa, and that there should be a moratorium on their slaughter and a Pan-African donkey strategy so their role and importance is recognised, and for us, so their health and welfare can be planned and delivered. So it was resolved pretty boldly we should take this to the African Union's Heads of State meeting this year. And so here they all are. This was 19 days ago in Ethiopia. And donkeys were on the agenda. It was a very tense couple of days. And as they say, if you don't want to know the result, look away now. But there you are. The African Union have banned the slaughter of donkeys. And they are going to do a strategy for donkeys across all of Africa. And that's great news for us all. And this is the BBC's coverage of the outcome. And I should say we're obviously very pleased with the BBC for that coverage, not just in the UK, but also worldwide. But it wasn't just the BBC either. This is just a selection, again, not an exhaustive list of all the people who've been covering developments in the donkey skin trade, starting with our very own Sidmouth Herald, which has probably covered more donkey stories than any other newspaper in the world. And I can see Dawn Vincent over there, used to be our excellent head of comms, who's probably spoken to the Sidmouth Herald more than anybody else. And to the New York Times, so that, again, it's this massive voice for change. So let's just go back to this map I showed at the start. I show this again just because you can see how important Africa is. Look how many of these source lines come from Africa. And that's not surprising. There are 33 million donkeys in Africa. It's about 2/3 of the world's population. So actually tying off the supply from Africa is incredibly important. I can also tell you that we're working very hard in Brazil at the moment, and there's legislation going through there at the moment to also end the donkey skin trade. I'm not a betting man. Maybe not a great thing to say to a horse racing type audience, but I'm not. But I'm pretty sure that in the next year or so that will go through. But what about China? Well, there's some interesting things there as well. We know some things, except they don't have the ability to produce the number of donkey skins they need at the current levels of production. That's important because at one point they were talking about the import of skins as being a temporary thing. But they now say they realise that's not going to be the case. They wanted to intensively farm donkeys in large numbers. They've tried it. It's not been tremendously successful. And they know, the industry, we have, I think I explained last time, we do actually have quite amicable relationships with the industry. Sometimes people are surprised with that. They know that there will have to be change at some point, but not whilst they can still source skins from other countries. So we know the change is possible, and that's why these decisions are important. And there are some interesting developments in traditional Chinese medicine. Cordyceps are a popular traditional Chinese medicine, and they are now increasingly rare and hard to get in the wild, to source from the wild. So much of this is now lab-grown and accepted by the public. And this is an important precedent for us, because when push came to shove, actually there was flexibility in how traditional Chinese medicines could be manufactured, and they exist for donkey collagen as well. And this was Thursday last week. This slide shows the headline from the South China Morning Post, talking about how China should be supporting the African Union ban on donkey skins, and that actually diplomatically it was not in China's interests to be seen to be adversely affecting the economies of all those countries, 55 countries in China. Now, in Africa, sorry. Of course, one article doesn't make a summer, but I think it does show that maybe there is some change in the air and something else to inspire us. So let's go back to our little ICWI coalition. Not many years ago, we were talking about how to get people to talk about this issue, let alone take action, and how that has changed. It's not all over, not by a long way. Major work needs to be done on the ban and the African strategy, and we have to convince producers in China to change to the existing alternatives. And we need to be mindful of where supply lines will go. But I can say that the last 4 years has been an extraordinary journey. And who would have thought that 4 equine NGOs could find partners from all sectors in all parts of the world to find common ground and to get one of the biggest political forums in the world to support donkeys. Now, the Donkey Sanctuary couldn't have done that alone, and ICWI couldn't have done that alone, but by engagement, collaboration, and by persistence sometimes, we've made great progress, and that is something to inspire us to do more. So I'm grateful for being the opportunity to speak to you all again today. Let's hope there's even better news for donkeys in the future. The interest of the National Equine Forum is very much appreciated by all of us who work to protect and improve the lives of donkeys and other working equids. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'd just like to read a comment from Slido, which I'm sure is thought by everyone. Huge thanks and congratulations to all involved in having the trade in donkey skins banned in Africa. So thank you to one and all for that. Do we have a question from the auditorium? And again, please stand. Question? If not, I do have one from Slido, which I think is very relevant, Ian. How can it be ensured that the introduced ban in Africa will be controlled and enforced?
Yeah, and well, you could say that ditto to any ban that's in any place in any part of the world. We realise that it's going to be a difficult game. It's why the strategy is also important. There's not a complete consensus across the 55 governments of Africa. It's interesting to see how they came to a consensual point. The reason I think they came to a consensual point is because some countries are losing their donkeys to a point where it's becoming economically difficult for them. They're going to enforce a ban because they need to protect the donkeys. There are other countries that think they have a surplus of donkeys and something could be done with them and they could sell them or whatever. So they're probably going to be less likely for that. But that's why the strategy is important. And this is the bit I think everybody does agree on. What Africa needs to decide is how many donkeys it needs, how it looks after them well, where they need to be in the continent, and to provide them accordingly. And if they do that, then actually the argument around surpluses where people want to get rid of them, or deficits where people are desperately trying to get more, becomes less of an argument. So you take the heat out of the situation. And I think, whilst that work is going on and the ban becomes law, each country, it's a bit like the European Union, so I'm sure some of us remember that, is that, if you have a heads of state decision, each of the individual governments then have to put it in place. That's why I said there's major work to be done. But we shouldn't lose the importance of the decision, because it's the first time the continents come together and say, donkeys are important, and we need to agree how we're going to get the right number and how they're going to be bred and how they're going to be looked after.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Wood from Dodson and Horrell. Thank you very much for that really inspiring talk. What I thought, my instinct wants to go, well, just tell the Chinese to stop using it. And I find it really refreshing, and probably something that we can all learn from is you didn't obviously take that tack yet. Maybe tell us why you didn't, and potentially is that something that you will go to in the future, and maybe what we can all learn in other situations to use maybe a different method than our gut instinct wants to be a bit preachy.
I think this point has been made previously. There was a minister from one of the African governments recently who said that the attack on the Ajau industry was not driven by donkeys or animal welfare, but by the West trying to have cheap pops at Chinese culture. And I think that's a real thing we need to be very cautious about. You know, there are people in the UK take all sorts of medications and say it does this and it does that, and we tolerate that. Traditional Chinese medicine is tremendously popular to lots of Chinese people. And we need to engage and get them to do things with us. I think the easiest thing for them would be if we started to attack the culture and the use of it. I think they would just simply use that as the opportunity to drop the shutters. So I think, you know, people like me, and it's not just me, we just need to keep talking to these people. We're doing a hell of a lot of work on the alternatives that are available. And the cordyceps thing is a really good one as well, because that's something we can sort of say, well, you've done it once, so let's start doing it again before we run out of donkeys.
Thank you, Ian.